Hi, welcome to iEducator. This is Teacher Jeff. I'm an educator and an engineer by profession. And today we will discuss Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is all about economics, nature, and concept. And in today's lesson, there are seven key areas that I'm going to be discussing today. First, we have the economics definition. Second, the nature of economics. Third, the division of economics. Fourth, we have methods of economics. Fifth, we have the history of economics. Sixth, we have the basic economic problems. And finally, we have economic resources. Now, in order for us to get started, let us define what economics is. But before that, remember that ours is a busy word, right? Our world is very busy because people are ever on the move. Countless factories the world over hum to turn out goods. Farmers plow the fields to satisfy basic foods, shelter, and clothing requirements. And aside from that, business and industry, commerce and trade also go on incessantly. We are all producers of some sort. We are also consumers at the same time. And that being said, we conceive plans to make living more pleasant and abundant. Work we must as constantly we crave for goods and services to satisfy our wants. Somehow, goods and services fall short in satisfying our needs and desires. This is because our wants are unlimited. And so, for that matter, we live in a world of economics. So many individuals have no clear understanding of what economics is all about. And yet, it is an essential part of our daily lives. Almost always, if not all, human activities involve economics. We cannot isolate ourselves from economics because our physical existence depends on it. So we cannot live without production and consumption, which are the major activities of economics. And clearly, a good knowledge of economics offers many favorable possibilities. And with the use of appropriate economic decision and implementation, life for everybody is most likely better. So if we see economics as a social science, it is actually concerned with the production, distribution, exchange, and consumption of goods and services. So if we say production, we actually, this is the very start of the process. We produce the goods and services. And once we already have the finished goods and services, what we usually do is we distribute them to wholesalers or to our intermediaries, or what we call our wholesalers or retailers. And after having distributed them to the wholesalers or retailers, um, normally the wholesalers and retailers are the grocery stores. Okay, so if I am a customer and I go grocery shopping, then what I usually do is to select products of my selection, and I exchange these products to my money. Okay, so that's what we call exchange. You exchange your money with the goods and services offered for that certain department store or grocery store, and then you consume the goods and services that you produce. So that's how economics is being defined. So, based on that definition, we can tell that economists focus on the way in which individuals, groups, business enterprises, and governments seek to achieve efficiently any economic objective they select. And other fields of study also contribute to this knowledge, such as psychology and ethics. which try to explain how objectives are formed. Also, we have history, which records changes in human objectives. And we also have sociology, which interprets human behavior in social context. Now, standard economics can be divided into two major fields. The first field is what we call price theory or microeconomics, which explains how the interplay of supply and demand in competitive markets creates a multitude of individual prices, wage rates, profit margins, and rental changes. And microeconomics assumes that people behave rationally. So, what do we mean by this? If we say people behave rationally, consumers actually try to spend their income in ways that give them as much pleasure as possible. As economists say, they maximize utility. And for their part, entrepreneurs seek as much profit as they can extract from their operations. And another field is what we call macroeconomics. And if we say macroeconomics, it deals with modern explanations of national income and employment. Macroeconomics dates from the book The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, 1935, by the British economist John Maynard Keynes. His explanation of prosperity and recession centers on the total or aggregate demand for goods and services by consumers, business investors, and the governments. And because, according to Keynes, inadequate aggregate demand increases unemployment, the indicated cure is either more investment by businesses or spending by government, and consequently larger budget deficits. Now, there are a lot of authors and economic writers define economics in their own different perspectives. Let's have Adam Smith. Adam Smith considered it to be as the father of economics, and he defined it as an inquiry about the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. Alfred Marshall, on the other hand, views economics as a study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. It studies how man obtains income and how he utilizes income. Some sociologists look at economics as a social science because it deals with the study of human behavior or a study of man's life. A Filipino economics writer by the name of Sikat considers economics as a scientific study that deals with how individuals and how the society generally makes choices. So out from all of these definitions, the writer comes up with this definition of economics. And economics is the proper allocation and efficient use of available resources for the maximum satisfaction of human wants. Now, there are always economic problems because, remember, resources are scarce while human wants are unlimited. However, the bigger problem is that the resources are not only limited, but also unjustly distributed among the members of society. And this is the root cause of poverty. Now, moving on to our second key area of our discussion right now, that would be the nature of economics. Now, economics is classified as a social science because it deals with the study of man's life and how he lives with other men, correct? Now, it is interdependent with other sciences like sociology, political science, we have history, geography, and physics. It is even affected by religion. Now, our economic problems are not purely economic in nature. Yes, that is correct, because these are also created by non-economic factors like culture, education, social, and political. And therefore, it is not advisable to solve an economic problem with economic solution alone. Now, economics, being a science, is a systematic body of knowledge. Why systematic body of knowledge? Because it uses scientific methods in gathering data, analyzing the data, and making conclusions. Data are obtained. There are actually a couple ways in obtaining the data. Like we can obtain data by means of observation, by means of wave watching, or by means of interview or recording. So it's the empirical method, which also relies on practical experience. Conclusions are then based on an economic principle or generalizations in the limits of certain specific assumptions. If we say economic principles or theories, these are useful because they actually explain certain economic behaviors or conditions and thus can help in solving economic problems or serve as guides in economic planning and formulating economic programs. Models in the form of verbal statements, graphs, numerical tables, or mathematical equations represent theories or principles of economics. And when these economic principles or theories are already put into action, then they become economic policies or applied economics. Now, economics uses scientific methods in gathering data, formulating theories or principles, and in making conclusions. However, there are also limitations such as the biases and views of those who get the facts, who make the analysis, and who make the conclusion. The political, social, cultural, and economic background of individuals naturally forms bias and values. So for that matter, authors divide economics into three parts. First, we have the descriptive economics. Second, we have economic analysis or economic theory. And finally, we have applied economics. Now, economics is to be descriptive when it is concerned mainly with collection and presentation of pertinent data on a particular topic, such as banana or coconut industry or the agricultural system of a certain region. If it's a descriptive economics, it doesn't deal with numeric values. You are just simply describing a particular topic, okay? And if we say economic analysis or economic theory, it attempts to explain the workings of the economic system. In other words, it tries to explain the relationships between various sets of data collected and presented by the descriptive economists. And in applied economics, the economist utilizes the framework of analysis supplied by economic theory or analysis to explain the causes and significance of events presented by descriptive economics. Now, whatever the manner in which the field of economics is divided, there is at once discernible interrelationship among various subjects or divisions in the field. It has often been said that economics is like a ball of steel balls, that one ball cannot be moved without changing the position of other balls. This is interdependence in economics is important and must be borne in mind. Now, the next key area that we're going to be highlighting today, that would be the division of economics. Now, economics is divided into two divisions. First, we have microeconomics, and second, we have macroeconomics. If we say microeconomics, it analyzes the details of the economy. If we say micro, meaning specific details of the economy, and typically it deals with the study of economic behavior of individual units. Again, individual units because it's micro, specific detail of the economy. If we say individual units, this refers to consumers, firms, and entrepreneurs, which constitute a very small segment of whole the economy. On the other hand, if we say macroeconomics, it deals with the economic behavior of the whole economy or its aggregates. If we say aggregate, it is composed of individual units. Both of them are equally important, meaning to say one can study the whole without studying the parts. Neither can break aggregates into components without knowing what components made up the aggregates, if that makes sense. Now, economics includes demand and supply, theory of consumer behavior, theory of the firm, economic efficiency in consumption and production, and some applications like policies to regulate pollution and consumer protection. So these are the usual topics that are being discussed or catered in microeconomics debate. On the other hand, the topics that we're going to be dealing, we talked about macroeconomics, that would be the national income aggregates, the determination of the equilibrium level of national income, the monetary and fiscal policy, the dynamics of inflation and unemployment, and we also have economic development. All right, so these are the two divisions of economics. Again, have the microeconomics, specific details of economy, and we also have macroeconomics or the whole economy. And the next key area that we're going to highlight, that would be the methods of economics. So the methods of economics, there are two. First, we have positive economics, and second, we have normative economics. If we say positive economics, it is an approach to economics that seeks to understand the behavior, the operation of systems without judgment. This means saying that it describes what exists and how it works. Okay, so that is positive economics. On the other hand, if we say normative economics, it is an approach to economics that analyzes outcomes of economic behavior, evaluates them as whether good or bad, and may prescribe courses of action. And so for that matter, it is also known as policy economics. Okay, so moving on to the next key area, that would be the history of economics and how economics started. Now, the economic issues have occupied people's minds throughout the ages. Yes, that is true. And in fact, Aristotle and Plato in ancient Greece wrote about problems of wealth, property, and trade. both were prejudiced against commerce, feeling that to live by trade was undesirable. The Romans borrowed their economic ideas from the Greeks and showed the same contempt for trade. Now, during the Middle Ages, what actually happened was that the economic ideas of the Roman Catholic Church were actually expressed in the canon law. Again, it was expressed in the canon law, which condemned usury or the taking of interest for money loaned and regarded commerce as inferior to agriculture. The 18th century Scottish academic Adam Smith is most famous for writing The Wealth of Nations. This is the first major work to analyze and describe the characteristics and mechanism of the capitalist system. In other words, as emphasized by this excerpt examining thought and methodological approach, Smith was a philosopher who employed scientific rigor to arrive at his laissez-faire theory of capitalism, influenced by the ideas of his friend, the philosopher David Hume and Simon Bar. Now, economics as a subject of modern study, distinguishable from moral philosophy and politics, dates from the work Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, 1776, by the Scottish philosopher and economist Adam Smith. Mercantilism and the speculation of the physiocrats were precursors of the classical economics of Smith, his 19th century successors. Now, based on this history, the word economics has been derived from an ancient Greek word oikonomos, which means management of the household or the state. But fundamentally, economics is the process of making a living. Okay, and formally, economics is the field of study which concerns the management of all resources in relation to satisfaction of human needs. It actually deals with the processes of production, exchange, distribution, and consumption of goods and services, including all the details that go with these processes. And so, for that matter, his science is very young compared with the other sciences, which were formed even 400 years before the birth of Christ. It has been to be noted when Adam Smith's book, Wealth of Nations, which became the Bible of economics for more than a century, was published in 1776. And because of the economic traditions of Adam Smith in the field of science, he became considered as the father of modern economics. However, the ideas and practices of economics have been as old as mankind. And these economic thoughts appeared in biblical teachings, philosophy, and politics. And the primitive people's art of making a living represented a form of economics. So having said that, what are the basic economic problems then that usually people normally face? Well, all countries have economic problems, including the richest countries. Yes, that is correct. Even the richest countries have economic problems as well. However, the poorest countries have the biggest and longest economic problems, especially those countries that are under third world countries. There are no possibilities of erasing completely economic problems from the face of the earth. Productive resources are scarce, like I said earlier, and well-distributed, while the needs of the people are increasing due to population expansion. And moreover, human wants are unlimited, and that is why even the rich countries have economic problems. So if we see scarcity of resources, it is a problem that always confronts the production of both goods and services. But while the availability of resources is limited, the human wants are unlimited or insatiable. Economics comes in then to harmonize human wants with what he has. Now, the basic economic problem may be derived from the above cited or the aforementioned definitions and discussions. And since the available resources are not enough and sufficient to satisfy the unlimited wants of the people, decisions must be made with the said constraints in mind. And therefore, the following questions must be considered. And so, for that matter, the following questions must be considered. First, we need to ask ourselves what goods and services to produce. Now, in the first question, it is not really possible to produce all the goods and services that people want for their satisfaction, right? Because if you do that, that would be very timely and costly. And so, for that matter, to remedy such problem, a system of priorities has to be established. Meaning to say, basic needs of the people are given some priority. Conducting a feasibility study to determine the goods and services that people need can solve this problem. However, we should also bear in mind that in the case of the poor countries, there is no need to conduct a survey to determine the real needs of the people. This is only necessary to determine the quantity of goods to be produced. And the second question that we should ask ourselves, how to produce the goods and services? Well, the ideal situation is to produce the goods with the most efficient method. And so this involves machineries and equipment, technology, management, and skills. As a universal rule, goods and services must be produced in the most efficient manner, meaning to say, with the less time and with the less effort. This means maximum output with minimal input without sacrificing quality. The rich countries use advanced technology, while the poor countries use low technology in their production of goods and services. And the third question that we should consider and ask ourselves that would be how much to produce. Now, later, the cost of production would depend on the quantity of goods and services that people actually need. And the next question, for whom are the goods and services? Now, this is a problem of the distribution of goods and services because the distribution of goods and services are actually determined by the economic system. And finally, the last question that we need to consider that would be where and when to produce. Here, the accessibility to transportation, communication, market, and to the sources of raw materials are the basis for the entrepreneur to choose the best location of the business. However, the policy of the government must also be considered. Okay, so that's the key area that we're going to be discussing. That would be the economic resources. So what do we mean by economic resources? If we say economic resources, these are the things needed to carry on the production of goods and services. They are also called as factors of production. So examples of economic resources are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. If this is land, this refers to all natural resources which are given by and found in nature and are therefore not man-made. That being said, land is one of the factors of production, which includes land use for agricultural or industrial purposes, as well as natural resources taken from above or below the soil. And remember, rent is the payment for the use of land, especially if the business doesn't own its own land. Okay, so meaning to say they are just renting land, and so they can operate their business. And another example of economic resource that would be labor. If we say labor, this refers to the manpower or any form of human efforts exerted in the production of goods and services. These laborers or manpowers, these are the people who transform the raw materials into finished goods. Labor covers to that basic factor of production, which are productive services embodied in human physical activity, skills, intellectual powers, and others. And aside from that, it consists of human time spent in production, like driving buses or jeepneys, feeding cattle, chickens or horses, singing in nightclubs, acting movies in amphitheaters, or repairing household appliances. And if rent is the payment for the use of land, labor, wages are the payment for humans' efforts being exerted. And the next example of economic resource that would be capital. So what do we mean by capital? If we say capital, I'm not referring to money. Instead, I'm referring to man-made goods used in the production of goods and services. Meaning to say, this basic factor of production simply pertains to durable goods produced in order to produce other goods. It consists of buildings, plants and machineries, roads and bridges, and we also have computers, ship and airplanes, keyboards, electric guitars, and musical instruments, sports balls, etc. And take note that savings refer to the part of a person's income which is not spent on consumption. And the last example of economic resource, that would be entrepreneurial ability. If we say entrepreneurial ability, this refers to a person who combines the other resources used in the production of goods and services. Meaning to say, actual production needs the ability of an entrepreneur to decide on and implement the right combination of the first three factors of production. And take note that profit is the amount that is left behind after all allocations to other economic resources. And aside from land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial ability, another additional economic resource that would be money, machineries, technology, and we also have competent managers. All right, I think that's a good place to stop. If you have questions, please let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button